Welcome to Myth Informed, everyone, with your hosts, Brian and Dimitri. Today we have with us the amazing Blaire White. She's a battler, a YouTuber, a Twitter aficionado. She is a global superstar, and she's joining us today on Myth Informed. Welcome, Blaire.
Yay, thank you. Thanks for that amazing intro.
Well, you know, I had an actual intro, but it deleted itself literally 5 seconds before we started. So,
oh no,
that was my.
I'm not sure what happened there. Like,
it literally, you did something and then it deleted over here.
It's my fault.
Well, you pulled it off. You pulled it off.
Yeah, I mean, that was
Yom Kippur all over again. Cast the sins on me and drive the goat out of the town.
Listen, the Jews will save the planet. Let's just be very clear. That's going to happen.
Right.
Spoiler alert, but we will.
Right.
So,
we're officially not alt-right now, so that's good.
Well, you know, according to some people, that fence-sitting position. So, Blaire, we love the fact that you're joining us here today. You are, as I mentioned, a global superstar, doing good for the world. You're basically like a trans Santa, you know.
A trans Santa.
You're showering us all with gifts.
I try. Thank you.
No, really, and that's what I think. For all the shit and hate you get for being controversial online, and that controversial these days has a new meaning. But I think you've done more than anyone that I know in the trans community to reduce the amount of transphobia. Like, really,
Thank you.
It's huge, and especially among like people to the right of center. I'm thinking, are they going to listen to like the pink-haired SJW? You're going to need someone that at least has something.
Or the chick in the MAGA hat.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You know, I'm kind of the first trans person to sort of be able to build an audience and speak to people, you know, on the other side of the spectrum. Other than me, you know, there's Caitlyn Jenner, who I know is a Republican and trans, but she's also not considered to a lot of people on the right to be, you know, the most trustworthy or whatever. Like, there's a lot of controversy following her, right?
Was that when he threatened to punch Ben Shapiro in the face?
No, that was Zoe.
No, that was someone else.
Oh, that was Caitlyn Jenner.
No, it wasn't.
No, that was someone else.
Something else. No, I'm sure it wasn't.
Yeah. And I mean,
I'll look this up.
And I'm friends with Caitlyn. I think she's great, but I think that, you know, I'm kind of the first person to do it as far as build an audience to the right. And I really appreciate the fact that there's so many people that are willing to listen. And, you know, people kind of sometimes get really angry that I'm not doing what I could be doing, quote unquote, for the trans community. But I feel like I do it in a different way. And I feel like, you know, if every trans person in media or online or with a platform are all leftists, it's like, who's going to be there to bridge the gap? I try really hard to bridge the gap. So, yeah.
It's a good point. And it's not just the United States and Canada that you're dealing with. Your video about those that were like in the Middle East or Malaysia or in
Iran.
And yeah, in countries that have like oppressive regimes or a very, very conservative culture, like those emails were heart-wrenching. So, I mean, like you seem like you're a beacon of hope to people that U.S. culture doesn't apply.
Thank you. You know, I really try to be. I did do a video on LGBT people in the Middle East, and it's just it really changes your perspective when you understand that the quality of life for people in other countries are so terrible. And that seems like a no-brainer. You know, I think we all know, you know, logically that LGBT rights are different throughout the world, but it's not until you really hear their stories and sort of see what they go through that you kind of realize, man, it is such a huge difference. And personally, it gave me a really good perspective because, I mean, you know me, I'm like trans, living in Hollywood. I have like a decent life, right? But sometimes you have to take a step back and just understand what you have and what you could be lacking. How do you be living somewhere else?
I wonder if you consider it to be, I'm going to use the word spectrum, but this isn't the right word. So I'll give you a personal anecdote. So I have immigrant parents. I mean, I myself am an immigrant, but they're like super immigrant, right? Fresh off the boat.
Right.
Accents and everything. So they started off with like, basically, you know, gay people are like the worst thing in the world, right? And that's a purely Soviet mentality.
Mm-hmm.
to we can openly talk about this, and there's no animosity there. Like, I mean, the amount of moderation that they've come down to is unbelievable. I'm going to give them props, but really they should have been there from the beginning, right? Now they're not there with trans anything. That's still like a hill that's way too hard to climb. Do you think that is a gradual progression? Like, if I were to give them another, 20, 30 years, whatever, they would be over. Obviously you don't know them, but folks in that same camp, do you think we've gone over the L hill, well, the LG hill, and that the BT hill is the next one to conquer?
I would say so. I think that just the way things have gone historically, the T in LGBT is kind of always last in terms of people coming to understanding about them. But I think that also sort of informs my patience with people. The fact that there have been studies that show that the more people are aware of gay people in their life, the more likely they are to be accepting. So it's easy to, not like gay people or whatever if the only gay people you've ever seen are on TV or online or whatever. But if you have a coworker, a brother, a sister, a son, an uncle, those people tend to be like, you know what, it's fine. Trans people are an extremely, extremely small percentage of the population. I think it's something, right? Yeah, I think it's something like less than 1. It's like 0.03 or whatever. And so in a perfect world, it shouldn't matter that there's not very many. People should just accept people and value freedom, etc. But logically, most people have never met a trans person, never come in contact, and YouTube and online plays a huge part in people seeing these people. So, people who follow me are a lot less likely to follow the majority of other trans people on YouTube doing somewhat of what I do, commentary stuff, because they're so radically different from them politically. But they see, Blaire White, who has, somewhat of the same opinions as them in middle America, places where they never meet a trans person. And they're like, wow, this is something I can maybe not fully understand, but I don't have to hold any sort of prejudice because it's just another person. And there's also a misconception, I've said it before, that trans is political. Trans is not political. Trans is just who you are, what you are. And I think a lot of people, because every trans person in media tends to be a leftist, associate it as an offshoot of leftism or of feminism, etc. When in reality, trans is just what you are, right? So.
Yeah. No, you mentioned, and I'll quick read a super chat that we'll probably dig into a little bit later. And says it is Tanya Whitaker.
Tatiana, man, it's a Russian name.
I effed it up, dude. Say it again, please.
Tatiana or Tanya for short.
For every Riley Dennis, there has to be a Blaire White. There has to be balance. I like that, and we're definitely going to get where Riley Dennis's name is going to come up later. But first, I just wanted to mention one of the things that talk about that either transphobia. It's like, okay, well, yeah, having a trans friend, but then there's always like this debate, and if you're a guy, that it's probably been asked one time, well, like, what happens if you hooked up with a trans person you didn't know, or something like that?
Make you gay?
And right, that or would that freak you out, or would you need to quote get revenge? And it seems to me that's like the biggest thing maybe that needs to be controlled. And again, I think you're killing it on this channel, like doing so well, because you've got your boyfriend out there. This guy is no soy boy, right? He's from
fiance.
Engaged now. Hey.
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Right. But I think this opens the door to reducing this percent. Like, oh, okay, there is a good example of this happening. Like, and if you were that person that felt like, well, yeah, I like that, but maybe my friend, you can open that door. I just thought the way you guys have honestly approached that, and the way he was talking about his relationship, before that, or with a trans person he met before. I really think that what you guys are doing helps.
Blaire, you can tell
just being public.
Brian doesn't miss a beat, not for a second. He's just he's a machine.
Yeah, I know. So I'm probably like, for those that haven't seen the video, it's pretty good. Like, you should definitely every time they're together, watching her boyfriend, it's pretty awesome.
Again, fiance.
Thank you.
I mean, all right, like, I don't know, but when it goes from fiance to wife too, you forget, man. Like,
yeah. Well, honestly, I've made a point to put Joey on my channel because, for a long time, I kind of got upset when people would call me a trans activist or a trans activist on the right or whatever. But lately, I'm kind of like, you know what? In a way, I am, because I think subconsciously, I make an effort to normalize being trans, not being in people's faces and screaming and trying to make them feel bad if they don't have all the info or understand perfectly, because I don't think that's effective. I think it's been proven that's not effective. I think I would like just to show people that like being trans is normal because I'm normal. You know, I have a super normal relationship, but I mean, what I do isn't so normal. I'm a YouTuber and I'm a social media person. That's kind of fucking weird. But other than that, like my life is fairly normal. And I think it's important to highlight that because we already have the representation on TV and in media of trans people who are like, you know, super, super out there. I think it's important to show both sides, if that makes sense.
How do you feel you stack up in the ecosystem of, I'll call it like LGBT minorities? And what I mean by that is the celebrities, the micro celebrities that are out there. You have your share of disagreements, but also there are parallels. So one that comes to mind hugely, or bigly, as Trump would say, would be Milo Yiannopoulos. I mean, he's obviously out there, you know, gaying it up, and also on the right as a kind of as a figurehead. The same Blaire. Yeah, sorry, Blaire. Jesus, Theron. You know, is another example of someone who's out there, who's a celebrity, who's also kind of a figurehead. Where, I mean, you stack in there, but you have your share of disagreements and maybe agreements. How do you see interactions in that sphere?
You know, I think this is just a constant through my life. I've never felt like part of a group. It's like I feel like I have sort of parallels with so many different groups. Like, you know, as far as like the Milo world and the sort of conservative commentator or anti-SJW thing, like I have a foot in there, right? Like I make content that's similar to that, but I think if people paid attention, I kind of do a lot of different style of content. Like I do living as a man for a day. That's obviously like a social experiment, like going out. There's nothing political about that. Or I'll make like a video talking about sexuality. Nothing political about that. So I think I'm in that world, but I'm also in a lot of other different worlds. Like I have like makeup companies that send me makeup every month just to put on my Instagram story because they feel like I have enough of an audience that's interested in beauty that I can do that, right? Like I try to be really diverse with all of that. So I like being in the world of conservative commentary and all of that. But I like kind of like just doing everything, if that makes sense, and talking about life on my channel and not always talking about the current political talking point that everyone needs to hit, if that makes sense.
And where do you fall on, I'll call it, issues of political correctness? So we have a major healthcare organization here in the area that is toying with the idea and, you know, may move forward with it of renaming something like women's health into removing the word women's, because apparently that's not PC enough and we need to be inclusive. Right. And that now starts going into, well, if it's not women's health and you're not really a woman, well, biologically born a woman,
right?
Body is different. The doctor has to treat you in a certain way. This could be medically worse for you than otherwise. Where do you fall on issues like that, where it's kind of hitting you in the lifestyle aspect, but also the politically correct aspect, and also affecting your health? So where do you line up on some of these issues?
Right. I mean, I personally have no room in my life for political correctness. Anyone who watches my videos knows that. Like, and the way I am in real life is very similar to my videos. Like, I'll make like jokes that other trans people, a lot of them, would never ever make. Like, I made a video with my friend Eden recently, who's also trans, and like we were calling each other men the whole time, and it was funny. And I think that anytime political correctness gets in the way of, you know, science or health or people's well-being, then it's bad, right? I think what you're just talking about, I haven't looked into it completely, but, you know, taking the word women's out, the truth is, logically, there's just a difference between men, women, trans men, and trans women. Like, that's just what it is. So healthcare for me would not be appropriate for me to go to a hospital and tell them flat out I'm a woman and not inform them that I'm a trans woman or that I've had, you know, gender reassignment or changes. It also wouldn't be appropriate if I went in and told them I'm a man and I need, you know, male healthcare, because they'd look at me like, what are you talking about? So, you know, everyone just needs to know their lane and like not be upset if they're not in a certain lane, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not losing sleep over the fact that when it comes down to science and medicine, like I can't claim womanhood. I can claim trans womanhood.
Yeah.
Even in the terms of my experiences, I often like to say, like, you know, I can't speak to the experiences of being a woman. I'm not a woman. I'm a trans woman. If you want me to sit here and talk about, you know, reproductive health and abortions and all that, like, I can do that because everyone has a right to speak on those issues. But I'm not going to come at it from a perspective of experience, you know, and that's just what it is. And I'm not ashamed of being trans. I think a lot of people who want to jump on that political correctness bandwagon, a lot of times sort of have like shame about being trans, which is so funny because people try to claim that I'm the one that hates being trans, but I really don't. I actually kind of like being trans. I like my life and the life I've built. So
I mean, it makes you a, you know, a unique personality. So if you're coming into a physical, you're going in with a full-on story. I'm this, I went through gender reassignment surgery, the whole 9 yards, right? And if you get hypothetically misgendered in the doctor's office, you're not going, these people are transphobic, blah, blah, blah. You're saying, listen, I'm here to get treatment for whatever, or a regular physical. I'm trying to get healthy. I don't give a shit how politically correct these people are, because ultimately they have my best interest in mind, right?
Absolutely. I often say, like, if you're not feeding me, effing me, or paying my bills, and I don't really care what you think about me. Like, I don't care I don't care if I go in somewhere and someone, like, a lot of trans women are worried about like getting clocked, like, and that means like having people in public know what they are, or know that they're trans, or know that they're biologically male. But I really could not give a crap.
Hit in the face?
No, not clocked. Clocked is trans slang.
Like they figured you out.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. If you get clocked as, like, if you walk in a grocery store and someone looks at you and they're like, oh, I know she's trans, like, whatever, for whatever reason, right? A lot of trans people are very greatly worried about that. And like, I remember being in that headspace when I was early in transition, but I'm at the point where, girl, I really do not care about any of that. So.
No, I do. I think your point about being comfortable, like, it's obvious that you are, because you're celebrating it. You're just out there. You're okay with making jokes. You know, well, no, it's
just out there.
You're out there. Is that a weird thing? But no, you even said you did a makeover where you were going to come out as a boy again. And it was just hilarious. And like, and then you turned out a lesbian. So
yeah, I went into it trying to be a boy. I came out a lesbian.
At least that's what you look like. But that kind of comfortability, I think that's why you're appealing to those in Malaysia, in Iran, and these places that are difficult. Because think about how hard it would be to be comfortable with yourself as a trans person in an ultra conservative society, you know, and you have ours, and you're able to do it. So I think that's why they're getting. It's like, how can I capture some of Blaire's happiness? And I think, yeah, if you do want to be happy as a trans person, you're an activist, you got to be happy yourself. You got to live it.
Dude, non-binary was born in Thailand. I don't know why you're bringing Southeast Asia in here, but they're like,
well, the guy was from Malaysia. One of the guys was from Malaysia.
Kings and queens of androgynous. So.
They really are.
Well, I don't know. Maybe he was from Fuck It. Tyler Phuket, sorry, or some of that's Thailand, not Malaysia. Okay,
yeah, I derailed.
I'm just gonna call it Siam.
But yeah, like, being comfortable with myself, though, if I'm being honest, like, has only come like in the past year or so. Like, I've been on YouTube for 2 years now, and my style of content has changed a lot. Like, if you watch my earlier videos, I was kind of angry in them, and I was kind of mean in them. And the way I would approach conversation was much more abrasive and much more like, I'm coming for you. And I can occasionally be like that.
That's snarky, not abrasive, but go on.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you know, if someone likes me, they'll say snarky. If someone doesn't like me, they'll say abrasive. But, but it was much more like that. And it was because, honestly, I was a lot more like unhappy with life. Like, when I started YouTube, I was kind of like broke. Like, I didn't have any transition surgeries that I wanted. Like, I was in a relationship I hated. And it was during election season when things were so heated, and I was so like affected by all of it. And it was easy for me to be angry and be mean and just go for a target. And now I feel like a lot of people have seen a little bit of a shift in me, that I'm a lot more open and encouraging of dialogue, which is great for Mythcon, because that's what it's all about. Yeah, I'm a lot more calm. I'm happier with my life. I don't have the energy to sit across from someone and scream at them. And that's what I'm really looking forward to with Mythcon, is the chance to go and have a conversation and move the dial a little bit, if that makes sense.
What if someone screams at you?
I'll cry. No, I won't cry. But no, if someone screams at me, I'll probably scream back. but I will never go out of my way to make anyone else feel uncomfortable.
No. I mean, we've got that covered. We can assure you.
Will be cheers most likely. The specifically to if people don't know that Blaire is coming to Mythcon, obviously she just said it, but she's
Spoiler
going to
alert.
be a part of a trans panel that's going to include herself, YouTuber Theron Meyer, and Angel Bonilla, who is on The Voice. I think the first trans person to compete in that on that show.
So if you want to see Blaire live, you gotta get your ass to Milwaukee on
Mythcon, yes.
And it's gonna be cool. And I think there where Theron Meyer is, I think, is very interesting. Very much like Theron Meyer. Thinks she's super smart. Definitely also described herself as a conservative, but like it seems like she was out, but then kind of pulled back. So I think Theron's been burned by a little bit, because I do think that there's, you know, there's this liberal, the classical liberals and kind of moderate right that are totally cool, and they are really over the transphobia, but there are some that really aren't, or are just kind of using, you know, maybe using her, or she felt like she was used as a tool. So I think that, you know, I wouldn't say Theron is necessarily conservative. I don't know what her views are right now. Maybe more central, but I think yours and
labeling her without her being here.
Just well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know. I think they're more centrist, but you're having you guys talk it out, what your different experiences are, what you feel like the issues and the way to attack them are, and then Angel, you know, coming from like that a Hollywood perspective, I guess, if that's what you want to call it, you know, like being on The Voice. I think that's going to be a really interesting discussion.
Absolutely. I could not be more excited for the conversation that's going to take place at Mythcon. I think everyone who knows me, well, maybe not everyone, but I think a lot of people who are aware of my presence online are aware that Theron and I go way back. My first ever appearance on YouTube was actually on her channel.
I didn't know that.
Really?
Yeah, we did a live stream, and after I did that with her, and that was at the very end of 2015, I got a bunch of messages from people saying you should start a YouTube channel. And I was like, okay, I guess I will. And I uploaded a video a few days later, and that one immediately took off. And then I was a YouTuber. So Theron was sort of the jump off for me to get into YouTube. And we've had a lot of ups and downs over the last 2 years. And we, just being frank, we don't see eye to eye on a lot. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation. And I don't really know much about the girl from The Voice, although I did see her on The Voice a few weeks ago, which was really cool. I was watching and I was like, wait, is that the girl that's going to be at Mythcon with my conversation? That's really cool. So I'm just excited to see what takes place.
Yeah, and I thought she's not really is involved in the YouTube stuff. So some of like, you know, in some ways that there's an uncontaminated bias or no bias there, and to, you know, to get her views just as
she's
somebody that's compete,
fresh. I mean,
exactly.
With no, you said it right, with no biases whatsoever.
Right, because sometimes YouTube can be like, well, you know, like there can be drama that follows YouTube, right, and like almost personal disagreements that become personal. So, you know, it
is the alt media octagon of sorts.
And speaking of like disagreements that get harsh, like Candace Owens comes to mind. Like that, like
guys.
Yeah, that. Did you see Rucka Ali's video of that?
I did see Rucka's video, and Rucka's actually a really good friend. So that was a really good laugh that I had with him. I was like, thank you for making that, because it's so funny.
That might have been the best thing to come out of that. Like, she kept interrupting. It
Blaire,
was tough.
Blaire, you realize
you got treated very well.
That's your theme song, right? I can't like see a picture of you now anymore without going.
I know. Almost every day I get a tweet. Like, I can say something like, just woke up eating cereal, and someone will tweet me, guys. I'm like, oh, I can't. Like, girl, I can't escape it now.
Okay, well, clearly anyone watching this that doesn't know what we're talking about needs to
Google guys, Rucka Ali, and you'll
Blaire White.
And Blaire White. You'll get it. It'll come right up. It's brilliant. It parodies
worth 3 minutes of your life.
Yeah, the conversation. And I really suspect that the Mythcon conversation will not devolve like that. So
we have a moderator on every panel.
Yeah, Brittany Simon's going to moderate that, who is kind of a BDSM educator, but is very, very good with issues of sexuality, trans, and like I think she's ideal to moderate this.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it was kind of a turning point for me after I did that Rubin Report episode. Because it was within the same week that I did the Rubin Report episode and the MAGA hat video that I've done, that I'm sure you've seen, where I got assaulted twice. And so that was in the space of a few days. And after that week in November, I was like, dude, like, I am so disinterested and so over sort of like this like extreme combativeness. Like, I'm much more interested lately in real conversation and respect and giving the other person a platform to speak at the same time. You know, I think I've grown a lot since that week, that horrible week.
And so how do you then reconcile with the other, I'll call it conservative voices that historically maybe you haven't seen eye to eye with? So again, Candace comes to mind just because that was a flare up, right? But you know, we personally don't know how, you know, what your views are or your interactions with like a Ben Shapiro,
Right.
Peterson, or whoever it is. So
Right.
where is it that you align, and if you don't align, then what are those reasons, like with Candace, where you're disagreeing beyond her, like the motives of her project and all that bullshit?
Yeah.
Just like politically speaking.
So it's interesting because I am definitely in the world of all those conservative commentators, and I'm often grouped in with them for good reason. You know, we have a lot of similarities, but honestly, the way I've seen things go down as far as the other conservative commentators in the trans issue, I find that it's often just used as a talking point. It's often just used as, you know, we got to put content out every day, so we have to say something negative about trans people on a Tuesday because we don't have anything to tweet about. Like, that's really just what it is. I'm just being super honest. Like, I don't have much respect for a lot of conservative commentators. There's only a few. I like Dave Rubin. He's not really conservative. I mean, he's a little bit of a gray area. And I like Ben Shapiro in a lot of ways, but a lot of it, if I'm just being honest, being in this world, meeting all of them, being on so many of their shows, so much of it is an act. Like, I'll just be super frank. A lot of these people do not believe the same things behind the scenes as they do in person.
But you've talked to them, and this comes out in candid conversations, or you're like, I'm getting a vibe, I'm talking to this person, and you know,
I'm talking. I have flat out been about to go on the air with people, or been at an event where I've met them, and I've had several very, very popular commentators tell me, you know, I just want you to know, like, I don't have anything against you or trans people. It's just part of the game. It's just part of what we say. And to me, you know, I just can't respect that. You know what I mean? I don't have any beef with people. I'm not the kind of person to call people out. But to me, no matter what the issue is, you can throw the trans thing aside. I don't respect anyone really who believes one thing off the air and believes another on air. I mean, I've literally witnessed just a complete 180 in beliefs and personalities, because the reality is, for the longest time in this country, and still to some extent, honestly, the media, the government, the culture, everything was dominated by leftism. So right-wing personalities were not very popular beyond like a few on Fox News until a few years ago. There's been a rise where, you know, these people can come out and like, and I have benefited greatly from that as the only trans person on the right wings in some respects, where like we get a lot of like success really quickly because people, it's something new to people. And so a lot of these people feel they have to continue to hit all these talking points. And the reality is that trans is one of them. The reality is that like posting a picture of a weird looking trans person and making fun of them or saying something stupid and trivial is just part of it. And I get that and I understand that. And if I'm being super honest, I've actually been caught up in that in the past. I've done the same thing.
But is this game ongoing? I mean, if you think about it, you've got the democratization of media. Right now, we've got mainstream channels that are going essentially losing popularity. Your Tucker Carlsons of the world are going to die off soon enough. And people are going to be listening to you and a Ben and whoever the hell is either, you know, on YouTube or some alternative media source. Right. So you don't need to necessarily, or like Steven Crowder doesn't need to follow the party line, right? He could pivot wherever he wants and maybe not have a ding in his audience. So if he wanted to pivot on trans things, or if he really wanted to endorse marijuana legalization, which he hasn't, unbelievably so. Why do you think that they're still doing this? And if they haven't, can you tell me where, if anything, if any positions you've budged on that in the past maybe year you've been like, you know what, I was fucking wrong.
Yeah.
I should probably just admit this and move on.
I would disagree with you a little bit that these people wouldn't take a hit from changing their opinions. Because if a really good example of this is Tomi Lahren. She went on The View.
Oh yeah.
And she holds every single conservative opinion down to the book, just a list. You can put it on paper, and she is hardline. Every opinion is conservative, except for she talked about how she's pro-life. She lost her job. She lost
pro-choice. Pro-choice.
Right. Sorry, pro-choice. And she lost a lot because of that. She lost a lot of fans. She had a lot of backlash. And I know that a lot of these people, I've had conversations with so many of these people behind the scenes. They are terrified to stray away from what is currently accepted as the talking points because they know that they'll get backlash. These people's success is bent on people agreeing with them, right? I'm not going to say never, but in the past year or so, I have really strayed from that sort of mentality. Like, I make videos where I go back and say, like, I was wrong on this. I do live streams where I actively engage with criticism. I'm not perfect, but I make a point to, if I was wrong about something, I'm going to make a video about it and I'm going to say I was wrong. But
I watched one of them where you detailed a number of videos. You were wrong about this, like this is a factual inaccuracy, or I didn't think about this right. Like, have you changed on any things? Like, I remember one time in a Shoe on Head video, you were saying, like, when a person says that they're non-binary, they're telling you a lot more about their politics than they are about their gender. Have you moved on that at all, or what are your thoughts on non-binary?
I still somewhat feel that way. I think it's very hard to come across someone who says they're non-binary who's not a liberal. That's just what that is. I've never met one or seen one.
But what does it mean to you when, like if you're going to imagine, like, the orientation, I guess, or the viewpoint, or like how they view themselves? I don't know what to call it, I guess.
What do you mean?
The orientation, the whatever. Like, I'm just not sure what to call non-binary.
I'm not sure the question. What do you mean?
It how do you view it as it valid? Like, would you know?
Oh, okay.
How would you define non-binary?
I think like, obviously whatever anyone wants to go by is like valid in a way, because it's like, this is how I feel. But I think that at the same time, there's not any scientific basis for non-binary being anything other than this is how I feel, right? Where I think there's a distinction between that and something like transgenderism, where it's measurable, where you can do brain scans. There are severe hormone imbalances that trans people are usually born with. And those aren't really found in non-binary people. So I think there's a bit of a difference there. But I would say I've changed a bit how, like, I used to be super like harsh towards them. Whereas now I just, like, all I would want is, like, they just not refer to themselves as trans, because it's something different to me. And I think that when it comes to, like I said, I like to speak and relate to right-wing people because I think that matters. And I think that when you throw in the non-binary, you lose them completely. And I think it would just be more efficient if you just keep it with trans, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but like on the left, then it seems like when you've talked to ContraPoints, who is a YouTuber, for those that don't know, but when ContraPoints, and you would talk, like, she also identified as non-binary for a time, and it sort of kind of like could feel for a second, okay, I kind of get you.
Dude, that's like saying you're agnostic on your way to atheism. It's like, it's a stepping stone. And
you may not know where you are, and a non-binary might be an apt descriptor, because that way you don't have to pick sides. Yeah, like, you know.
I agree with that to an extent, for sure. I remember before I transitioned, I never called myself non-binary or anything like that. I didn't really label it, but I was definitely in a little bit of a gray area. Like, half the time I would go out and people would think I was a girl, half the time they think I was a guy. And people have seen pictures, girl, I looked really weird. But so I understand, like, not being fully there. And I know Contra has since transitioned and identifies just as a trans woman. And so I understand that sometimes that's a stepping stone. But even a stepping stone, right, like isn't necessarily the same thing as someone who is transitioning and is trans. I still think it's a different thing, especially considering, like I made a video recently where I talked about the distinction, like it's just a different life. It's a different type of person. I've met a lot of people out here in Hollywood. I'm friends with people who think that they're non-binary and they identify in the middle. And we just have we're just such different people that when you're lumping it in with being trans, it doesn't really compute to people who are on the outside of the whole world and don't know what trans is. Like it doesn't compute for them. And so that's my angle, is like, I would prefer we just keep it separate because it's easier to understand for both of us, honestly. I think people, you know, that are outside of that world and don't know anything about it would have an easier time understanding both non-binary and trans if they were kept separate. But when you lump it in, it's like, okay, which is which, what is what then? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you mentioned you're living out in Hollywood, you're talking to all these people. If you had to classify the folks who you talk to who are claiming to be non-binary, you've heard the standard conservative argument, like, oh, these people, like on a Tuesday I'm a chick and on a Wednesday I'm a dude and blah blah.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, what kind of blouse should I put on?
I don't think it works
because
it doesn't, and that's not real either. Like,
right. So what I'm saying is that's the argument that they've historically used. Right. And you'll take like a Ben Shapiro, for example. This may or may not be his argument, but it seems to fit. So he would say, okay, I'm not going to even say him. The standard conservative argument would be, listen, you have nothing to offer in terms of individuality. You feel like you need to differentiate yourself somehow. Some people dye their hair green because they want to stand out because they have no personality. And person X might say, oh, I'm non-binary because, you know, I want people to think that I'm special because of that. Have you ever encountered that, or do you think that's just a bullshit kind of standard conservative argument that's used that doesn't apply?
I think there's some truth to it, but I think it's overstated. The majority of people that I've met that are sort of like, you know, have a unique gender self-perception or whatever. I do think a lot of them are very much invested in attention, but I think a lot of them are also very much invested in like figuring out who they are. I don't think it's like on a whim. I don't think it's necessarily a performance. I think they are being themselves, and if they're not like completely sure what themselves means, yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, like I've seen your views evolve. One of the things that I never thought I would see on your channel was an apology to Riley Dennis.
Yeah.
For those that don't know who Riley Dennis is, there's definitely been some snark back and forth. I think I can describe Riley as a transgender woman SJW, or social justice warrior, that you have had some disagreements with, but I felt like you went out of your way to apologize. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I had made like 4 or 5 response videos to Riley before I apologized. And I, you know, had plenty of political disagreements on issues, but I felt as though I had gone a little overboard with sort of the personal attacks. And again, this is going back to what I spoke about earlier about how the first year of my YouTube channel, which is when I think all of them, if not most of them, were made about Riley. Like, I was in a really bad place. Like I hated myself, if I'm being frank. And so it was easy for me to put that hate back into the world. And I was kind of, just to be frank, I was kind of mean. Like I said some things that were a little overboard, and I eventually felt bad, and I felt like I had to apologize. And I cried on video, honey, and it was kind of embarrassing, and I will never watch that video. But, you know, I felt like it was necessary. And I got some backlash from that, people, because there are people who are just like, no, like screw Riley, destroy her. But from that point, I couldn't find it in myself to be mean anymore.
Yeah, there is a Geneva Convention, at least there ought to be, with political disagreements. And maybe you felt like you went over the line and you said, look, we still don't agree on our politics, but sorry for being a bitch, right?
Yeah, exactly. It really was just that simple. I wasn't backtracking on politics. It was backtracking on like, okay, I didn't need to like say that or do that because that was overboard, you know?
I just thought that was cool because not everyone would be able to own up to do that. You could think that, but then some people don't make the public apology, or they'll do the insult in public and then make a private apology. But if you're going to do it in public, then it needs to be public. So I want to give you props for that.
Thank you.
And most of what we talk about is, we've mentioned Riley, we've mentioned Theron, Candace, whoever. I mean, all of these people are YouTubers, right? So the microcosm of your celebrity, of your popularity, is kind of a defined space. How do you foresee your brand branching out away from that and into the, we would call it the normie space? How does someone's dad or whoever the hell, does that mean you need to go on a Fox News or a MSNBC? How are you gonna be a household name in the world?
Right. It's interesting because this is a conversation I've been having. Sorry, I'm having a stroke or something. A conversation I've been having quite a while recently. Like I said, I've always felt like I've had my hand in a lot of different genres and a lot of different things. The way I see my brand continuing further is like growing and expanding in all directions. Like, I don't feel like I'm on just one path of like, I have to be this like conservative darling and end up on Fox News and do commentary. Like, I don't see that as my future at all, actually. First and foremost, I am a YouTuber, and there's a lot I can do on YouTube that's not political. There's a lot I can do, Another thing that's missing is like I'm active on like all platforms, right? So like there's Twitter, there's Instagram, and like I'll do like makeup brand deals on Instagram because I can do that because I wear makeup and I'm a public person and they feel like that's good enough.
Yeah, but aren't you going to reach the exact same audience that way? I mean, again, people who are plugged in, who are like, oh my God, it's Twitter, blah, or Instagram. Yeah. How are you getting to the 47-year-old who is, has no idea who you are?
I guess I'm just not super interested in getting to that person, honestly. I think the way of the future is the new media is being on the internet. I think that there are more, and actually I think there are more 47-year-olds sitting in Arkansas watching random people on YouTube than people might think. I think I'm so comfortable existing in this space of new media. I think that's the complete future. I think traditional media is scared of new media, and I think that's telling. That's why there's currently, a war going on between advertisers and everything, because the internet's taking over, and I'm completely happy to be one of the people who was here in the relative beginning of it all, and I plan on riding the wave as long as I can.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. And speaking of like more traditional or long-standing media outlets, I heard that you may be doing a movie, or there may be a movie being made about you.
Only rumors, Brian.
That I just heard very recently, like before we got on the podcast.
Yeah. So I am doing a feature-length documentary movie about my life. I am working on it with a company called WAG TV, and they do almost every single show that's currently on the Discovery Channel. They're an amazing company. They've been following me for the past week. Right now is like the first day I actually have a break from it. And they're going to be filming me all summer, and they're basically going to tell my whole life story. There's a lot I haven't told on my channel. They flew me to my hometown, and we filmed with my family, and we filmed with family that doesn't accept me for being trans. They're really delving deep, and they filmed me at VidCon recently, and they're just going to do a full thing, and I couldn't be more excited and happy. This is like the project of my life. This is the biggest thing I've ever worked on, and I'm just happy they're letting me talk about it so early, which is great.
And you're contractually obligated to do 2.5 nude scenes, so we should be talking about that.
Maybe not nude scenes, but I'm telling you, they are going deep in the most platonic way possible. They are going deep into my life, honey.
That was pretty funny. I hit the mic. I'm gonna have a sore lip. That's funny.
That would be a first. Blaire, you bruised his face.
Oh God. Right. Yeah. Right through. I want to know, like, from a personal note, we kind of came from the atheist space, and now we're like in the socio-cultural politics space. But I saw you on a live stream or a video with Jacqueline Glenn, who is one of my favorite YouTubers back then. I think she had the single funniest videos ever on YouTube are her Christian and Muslim phone sex lines. Oh my God, if you haven't seen them, they are worth a watch.
I love Jacqueline.
She tell me about her. Like how'd that go?
Jacqueline's great. Yeah, she was one of the first people I met when I moved out here to Hollywood, and she has always been so supportive of me and my work. And we just have a nice friendship. Like when we hang out, there's nothing political. It's just me and her hanging out. And I wish she was going to Mythcon because I would love to just see her. She's always busy. I'm always busy, but I think she is one of the most insightful, intelligent people. And I too actually used to watch her years ago before I even started YouTube. So it's like, that's been one of the craziest things about doing YouTube is like becoming friends with people that you watched when I was like 14 in my bedroom. Like that's the coolest part, honestly.
Oh my God, if you convince her to come, I will love you forever. Like that, oh my God, I would love to meet Jacqueline Glenn. She was one of the first people that I watched. She's great.
Yeah, I'll talk to her about it.
No, Blaire, this has been phenomenal. We can't wait to see you in a month or two, whatever. I can't count. September. That's going to be exciting. Is this going to be your first time in the Midwest?
It won't be. I actually used to live in the Midwest. I lived in Michigan for a while, but it's definitely my first big convention where I'm speaking like that. So it's going to be amazing. I can't wait.
Michigan's my shit,
yeah,
man.
definitely. We can't wait to meet you. I really think that you're this is like the ideal kind of panel for you, and it's
yes.
I like all the conversations that they're having at Mythcon. We've strived to keep as much balance as possible, and so not your panel, just like everyone else's, will not be an echo chamber. But I do think will be, again, discussions, friendly discussions, civil discussions that can get at things. We don't have to agree, but we can still be civil, or guess what, even friends.
Absolutely. I cannot wait for the discussion. I think it's going to be so great, so insightful. And I love the people on the panel and how it's, it's intellectually diverse, which is amazing. And I'm just so excited to go to Mythcon.
We're cultivating the type of positivity that you're exuding. That's exactly what we're trying to cultivate within the organization. So
yes,
keep the good vibes going.
Yeah, and thanks for your work. I really do mean that. I think you're a force against transphobia and for normaling.
It's called tour de force.
Yeah, and just in a beacon of hope for people that are in harder situations, are confused and depressed. So.
Blaire, are you writing these down? These are going on your resume.
Yeah, seriously, I'll make your CV.
Yeah, you should write my job packet.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys.
Bye, Blaire.